Hey everybody, Biohacking Blondes here. It's Molly and Alex. We're excited to have another podcast with you guys. Today we'd love to chat a little bit about hormones and sort of take people through a primer because Alex and I both feel like we never really got this as a as a child or, in our, how many years of schooling has it been?
Yeah,
We
exactly.
never really learned much about our cycles or how like the cycles of female hormones across a lifespan and things like that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're super excited to just give you guys like some baseline information, like how to track your cycle, how to eat during your cycle, the phases of things, how to get tested for hormones, all of that fun stuff. But first, Alex, how has your week been? What's going on with you? I know you have a cool, exciting statement to share.
Yay! Hi, everyone. Great to have you back. My week has been actually superb. I was appointed as an advisory board member for Demarest Clinic, which is a stem cell clinic in Thailand. And we got super exciting because we are actually expanding this clinic and want to be the leaders in longevity medicine and yeah, kind of spreading these clinics to 100 a little bit all over Dubai and the Bahamas, etc. So I'm super exciting, and I am the advisory for the biohacking part. So I'll be stacking all the biohacking components of all these clinics. So before you have a stem cell treatment, for people that don't know, you want to be optimal functioning, in your health. So biohacking can really help that. So we're
Mhm.
talking stacking of different modalities. So, red bed, PEMF, oxygen, ozone, all those fun stuff that I am, so into, right? And yeah, it's a big opportunity for me. And then also the founder of the Demarest Clinic, him and I, we are gonna co-brand some products as well, which I am so excited.
Ooh,
So
that's so
yeah, big week.
I know. Can you talk about your product at all, or is that on the down low until
Yeah,
until
that's a little bit kind of yeah, I don't
proprietary?
want to share that just yet. But that is it's something very exciting. So
Oh,
yeah, I'm pumped and very busy obviously. And other than that, heading out to leaving town on Sunday. I'm going to London for work, and then I'm heading over to Dubai for more work. So very exciting. And again, it's for Scandi Labs and for the biohacking part of my company. So very
I'm
excited.
oh my gosh, how fun is that going to be? I bet they do a lot of cool biohacking in Dubai, to be honest. They have all
Yes.
the best of the best there.
The best of the best, and there's no money spared. It's
Yeah.
it's all out.
Exactly. It's
So,
like
but
glistening gold in the sand. That's what I think of.
right, exactly. It's
Uh,
gold pimp mats, gold
right,
ribbons.
right.
What
It's
about you,
over
Molly?
the top.
Yeah,
Over
over the top, exactly. Oh, it'll
I
be
love
great.
it.
Yeah.
I
What
love it.
What about you, Molly? How was your week?
Well, this week was great. I actually stopped at in Vero. We have a cute little it's kind of like a biohacking lab. It's called Kramer Wellness. I stopped by there on Tuesday, and I know Alex knows Wendy, who owns it over there. She was so lovely. I went with my friend Tiffany after yoga on Tuesday morning, and she has a great little sort of studio space. She's got a PEMF mat. She's got red light therapy. She's got foot baths. She's got all kinds of supplements. She like freeze
She
dries
has Candy Labs. She
and
carries
Candy
Candy
Labs,
Labs.
yes.
Yeah.
And she freeze dries bananas, which was kind of cool. Like she has all these like freeze dried bananas there that look really delicious. So she's really cute, really fun, and she showed us all around her lab. And we got to try a few things, which was so nice. I did one of those ionic foot baths. So that
How
was
was that?
um, it was gross because like it turned green. You put your so the ionic foot baths, it's very hot water. They put it in a bath, you put your feet in, and I'm not entirely sure of maybe you know more about them than I do, but they have some kind of ionic salt or something in them that helps pull toxins out of your body through your feet.
Okay.
Um, and it's interesting because your feet are kind of, there's all these things with your feet, like acupuncture. There are a lot of acupuncture points on your feet, reflexology and rolfing and all these things where they like affect the feet and it can change systems in your body. It's kind of a cool thing.
Mm.
Um, so I put my feet in a foot bath and and she's like, feel this vein on your leg. And I felt the vein and the vein was like popping out of my leg, like pulsing. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of wild. Because before that, it had just been normal. So really something is happening there. I'm not sure. And then what's crazy is that the tank like turns different colors, and then the colors mean different things. So like, green is like digestive issues, and like, yellow is like bile, or bubbles mean different things, or yeast, or like all this different kind of stuff. So that was kind of cool. It was like a major, it really felt like a major detox. Like, so
That's incredible. I love
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Wow. I haven't even tried that myself. I need to go to her. I was going to do the HOCAT with her, which is
Yes,
that's
she does that too.
detoxification. Oh, you did that as well?
Well, I didn't do that day. I've done that before. I've done that at the biohacking lab in Fort Lauderdale. But she has that in there. It's supposed to be quite amazing. You're supposed to, do it all the time. But do you want to tell people what the HOCAT does?
Yeah, the HOCAT is huge for detoxification. So it's got ozone, it's got red light. I think it has 10 different modalities in one. And basically what it does is you sit in this, it looks like almost like a box, and your head is out, and it's just incredible for getting impurities out. And like, I am currently on a mold detox, so I should be in there once a week. I just haven't gotten there yet. But it's amazing for the immune system. Yeah, really, really good modality. You're
Yeah.
sweating out things. Yeah.
Yeah. I did it once and I thought it was very relaxing actually. I remember thinking, "Oh, this is nice." It's a little weird. You're like naked inside of a like spaceship, it looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a little like awkward, and the lady's kind of talking to you and you're just like a head poking out of this thing,
Yeah.
but it's great, and it's really supposed to detox cells. And she said you could feel a little tired after doing it. I did not feel that way when I did it. So every modality is a little different and affects people differently. But she's got a cool little space over there, and I think people should really go check her out. It's Kramer Wellness, and lots of fun stuff to do over there if you have free time. And she's such a nice lady, Wendy. She took us around and showed us all the things, and she gave me some free methylene blue, which was nice.
Nice done.
Yeah, which is great.
Wonderful.
By the way, methylene blue, for people who don't know, is a supplement that can help with focus. And what else does it do? I feel like it's sort of meant to be for
Well, it
your
helps with the
mitochondria,
mitochondria. So
right?
what you want to do is you want to take methylene blue before going into the red bed. So it
Hmm.
supercharges the mitochondria and the ADP production.
Yeah.
So
Oh gosh, that's a cool stack. Yeah,
yeah,
for
that's
sure.
a super cool stack. So I use it before I go in the red bed. And then I use, people swear by the suppositories. Those are like the big deal right now in the methylene blue. But
Right.
I use the drops, and I actually put them under my tongue.
Yeah.
So,
And so you don't have a blue tongue.
well, I still have blue teeth. So,
Yeah.
and I did it the other day because I'm on the mold detox, right? So we were out on Friday night, and I put this blue thing in, and I went in the red bed before our dinner. We were going out. And then I was kind of like, still had a blue tongue when we went for dinner, blue tongue and kind of bluish teeth at the bottom. And my husband is like, really? You're kidding me, right? But it made a huge difference because I was actually super tired on the mold detox. You can get really tired.
Yeah.
And it totally shifted everything. Like, it shifted how I felt, like big, big time. Methylene blue together with a red light bed. Oh,
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. You know what Wendy did actually? She put the drops of the methylene blue into just an empty capsule, and then we just swallow the capsule. So
Ah, clever.
yeah, so
Clever.
that might be a little bit better if you don't want to walk around with blue teeth and like a strange blue blue.
Right, right, right,
Um,
exactly.
yeah,
I,
but it was
but
cool.
I think, but just to mention on that, I got to ask her about that because sometimes while you take it in the mouth, and for this reason, same with the troches, you put
Yeah.
them in the mouth, is for the mucosal membrane absorption. So if you
Ah,
swallow it, it's not the same absorption. And you want it to go through the mucosa membranes. That's the whole kind of point. So she's kind of
Right.
missing out a little bit there. I got to talk to her about that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's interesting. I mean, maybe she also just was like, oh, for your first time trying it, see how that goes instead of having like a blue tongue all day. But
Right, right, right.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right,
but you're right. Like your tongue area and like your gums are a great place to absorb.
right.
It goes right in the
Exactly.
bloodstream that way. It's pretty
That's
quick.
right.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And that's what Scandy Labs does too. You just hold it in the mouth, right? It gets absorbed
Yep.
through the gums in the mouth. Yeah.
That's right. That's the whole point. So
Love
yeah.
it. So yeah, fun week.
Yeah.
But in
Great.
any case, so why don't we start a little bit with hormones? Like Alex and I were talking about what we wanted to discuss today, and I was like, let's give everybody just kind of like a primer on female hormones specifically, on and what the stages of life are. There's kind of a cool book out right now. It's called The Hormone Shift. And it's by Tasneem Bhatia. She's kind of this famous doctor right now. She works a lot for Goop. I see her write articles for Goop and Gwyneth Paltrow all the time. I think she's Gwyneth Paltrow's like main hormone specialist. And she's great. And this book kind of takes you through, everything from puberty to menopause and what that kind of looks like for women. So I think it's a great book, and I think people should check it out just to get sort of more details on, what we didn't learn in high school and college and every other schooling opportunity we had where we didn't learn about ourselves. So
Right.
I mean, it's kind of sad that our system, doesn't teach women how to track their cycle, how to look for issues, because a lot of times your cycle is, we call it like an extra vital sign, like your fifth vital sign or whatever. It's like your heart rate, your blood pressure, blah blah blah, and how's your cycle? Like it's all
Right.
part of the picture of your health, right? So if you're not cycling, that can be a sign of a health issue, or if you're cycling too much, or your periods are irregular. Like these are all signs of a deeper issue, right? So I'll just start, from when we're little and kind of work our way up. And there's like a lot to discuss in perimenopause, so I'll kind of breeze through some of the other sections, but just to get started. So obviously, when puberty happens to girls, like the onset typically begins between the ages of 8 and 13. Sometimes it can be even longer than that, but like typically if you're not getting your period by the time you're like 15, 16, that can actually be the sign of an issue. Um, or potentially a health issue, right? You go through all kinds of like hormonal changes. Your brain starts to change. The pituitary gland starts to release hormones that stimulate ovaries. And that's when, you start like growing breasts and getting hair in various places that it wasn't before, you know. You get growth spurts, and in some cases this is why, girls often mature a little faster than boys too. They're sort of going through this puberty maybe a little earlier than boys sometimes too. And even like an early puberty for a girl can be caused by all kinds of different things. I mean, it can be genetic, but it could also be related to stress. It could be related to food intake. Potentially high insulin can make your period come faster. So it could be if you're overweight, you're eating too many carbs, you're like, now we're hearing about these kids who are diabetic even at a very young age. So that kind of thing can affect the whole hormonal cycle, and it's all connected, right? Like hormones and metabolism, all of that is kind of the same piece of the pie, right? So then when your menstrual cycle comes, it usually lasts about 28 days, which is kind of like this moon cycle that people talk about. It's funny, I was like looking into, what kind of data they had around how the moon cycle versus like our menstrual cycle. And so many practitioners are like, you should be getting your period on the new moon, and then being on ovulation during the full moon. And that's like what they say was in the olden days, that's how everybody cycled, right? But now
Wow.
we have too many, I know it's pretty cool, but like we have too many variables now that affect the cycle. So, everything from diet and stress and all of that. So there isn't a lot of data around that, but I do think I mean, what are the odds? It's like the same amount of days, right? It's roughly 28 to 30 days and the
Yeah.
moon cycle is the same.
Yeah. That's
Hmm.
incredible. It really.
Yeah. And if you think about it, the moon has the power to move the tides, right? The moon has the power to move the ocean with its pull, right? So we are like 75% water. So of course it's going to affect us to some degree. So it's kind of a cool idea. It's some people think it's a little woo-woo, but but I think there is some like
Of
there's
course.
there are some facts in there for sure. Um so then so when you're in your menstrual cycle, I'm just going to run through the various phases. Obviously you get your period, days roughly 1 through 5. Then you're in your kind of follicular phase, which is like roughly days 1 through 13, 1 through 13. Some people consider follicular also your period, but I like to think of it as like the week after the period. Um, and then basically at the end of like day 14, roughly, is when you should ovulate. This is like obviously the perfect time to have a baby. So hopefully not when you're like just 14, but like as you
Right.
get older,
Or 47.
right. Exactly.
No.
Um, but in this cycle, then so ovulation happens. That's when an egg is released into the fallopian tubes, and then if your egg is not uh uh what's the word
Quality. Good
yeah,
quality.
quality, or if it's not if a sperm doesn't go in there and make you pregnant, then you can just then you start to have your period, right? So then you go into the luteal phase where you have about a week of like your body is starting to release the egg and kind of creates this whole other organ in the body where it sheds the lining of the uterus, and that's what's kind of coming out when you have your period. And that's usually a 1 to 5 day process. So this is kind of the basic uh cycle that all women go through. So I know, like, if there are any men listening to this, they're probably like, oh gosh, like but this is like, I know it's not, it's like TMI, and there's this a weird thing where women also don't talk about their periods much, which I think is a bit odd, because I think if we shared more often like what we go through, we might be able to solve more problems. Um, but that's the basic gist for that. And then you're sort of in your reproductive years at that point, right? And those can basically last up until, you're roughly 35. And then what happens at 35 is your body starts to transition into perimenopause. And this is also like, if like when you go to the doctor, if you're 35 years old and you're pregnant, they actually call you a geriatric pregnancy. Um, which is crazy, I know, but it's like 35 is not old, but we've expanded our lifespan, right? But with all this medication, and we live much longer now and things like that. And our fertile period of reproductive years really is like between the ages of like 15 and 30 for the most part. And it's kind of sad, I know, because I know a lot of women, like, you feel like you haven't even started your life by the time you're 35, right? It's like so that part can be kind of tricky because men are obviously not on this timeline, right? We kind of have a finite time that we have to get pregnant in. Otherwise, we don't really have, the opportunity to. So what happens then, like in your sort of late 30s, early 40s, is you transition into this perimenopause state. This is like a gradual decline of reproductive function. And believe it or not, after the age of 35, progesterone declines by 70%.
Wow.
I know, which is so sad because progesterone is like the lovely, happy hormone that makes you, feel really lovely. And it literally means progesterone means progestation, right? So when you have high, wonderful levels of progesterone, it makes it really easy to get pregnant. And for some women who can't get pregnant, just adding a little progesterone into their system can boost fertility. And there's all kinds of things that can be done with fertility, including eating a healthy diet, and getting blood sugar management under control. Because that can, when your blood sugar is off and your stress is off and all of these things are off, that can lead to infertility issues. So there's a lot that, even someone like myself, like a functional practitioner, can do about fertility, just in terms of diet, rest, exercise, and specifically stress management, which I think actually has the biggest effect on fertility. And that's because there's a cortisol issue, with, the way cortisol works. It can kind of derail progesterone, because it's getting in there and messing with the receptors and causing all kinds of things. So when your cortisol is off, this can be caused by dieting, even fasting, too much stress. They can all kind of lower your hormones and kind of put you into an earlier, like, perimenopausal situation. Most women, when they start to feel, they may start to feel a little different at the end of their 30s and be like, something feels a little off. Maybe their energy's off. Maybe they get a little more moody. Maybe they're more PMSy, which is, PMS is the week before the period starts, where you feel kind of like, a dark cloud is covering you. You're like, why all of a sudden do I hate my husband and hate my kids? And why do I like want to, run outside and run away? Like, that's kind of like what PMS feels like. Which is sad, because PMS is generally not normal. It's common, but it's not normal. And there are a lot of things that we can look at to address that, namely cortisol balancing. So there's this issue with cortisol and your metabolism, where when your cortisol is very high, it can sort of cause glucose to be very high, and that can then stimulate high demand for insulin. And then, stress, this is like where stress alone can make you gain weight, even if you eat very healthy. So this is kind of, we have to kind of learn how to do some stress and coping mechanisms. So like what Alex and I like to do are breathing techniques, stuff that's free. You can go outside and go for a walk in the sun, get some grounding, all of those like easy biohacks, right, that can help with stress and cortisol reduction.
Lay on your penf mat is
Lay
another
on your
great.
house mat. Yep. All of those things. And then, also like, leaky gut and permeability in the gut can also cause all sorts of issues with hormone management, all of those things. So this is where it's important to kind of look at some testing, look at some gut testing, your GI map. Usually in this phase, this perimenopausal phase, it's maybe a good time to get your hormones looked at by a functional practitioner or functional doctor. If you go to a gynecologist, which is what happens to most people, they go to the gynecologist and they say, hey, like my hormones are off, my cycle is off. How can you help me? They really only have a couple of options. They can put you on birth control, which, by the way, is hormone replacement therapy. Most people don't realize that, but when you go on birth control, you are taking estrogen and progesterone. So that is hormone replacement therapy technically. And that is, but it's the issue with that is it's kind of a blanket way of responding to someone's issues, right? So it works for some people, helps some people, doesn't help a lot of people, and it also has a lot of side effects like blood clotting, and just weight gain, all the things that you hear about various birth control methods. I'm not saying they're the worst thing in the world, but there are other ways. There are ways around them. So there are other things that you can do. Also, gynecologists typically won't test you because they claim that there's no way to test women's hormones and get an accurate reading. And what's
Can you
interesting,
debunk that? Can you debunk that, Molly?
yeah. So on some level, that's sort of accurate. Like obviously every month you're going to have a different cycle, right? So I always like to tell people your period is your report card from like your stress levels from the previous month. So, so
Wow.
like if you have, so if the previous month you were really relaxed and everything was great and, you didn't have a lot of stress and then your period comes, it's not painful, it's really light, it feels great, like then that's your report card. You did a nice job. You managed your stress effectively. Maybe you were sleeping well, like all of those things. But if your period is heavy and painful and you're having a lot of symptoms, a ton of PMS, all of that stuff, then you can kind of look back at the month before and be like, I was stressed out. Like, so, or the period doesn't come at all. And that's in usually more intense times of stress. Like I have clients who are always like, like December kind of comes along and they're like, I'm so stressed. I'm so stressed. And then January comes and there's no period. Right.
Wow,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, that's very common. Very common. I bet some people listening to this are like, uh-huh, that happened to me.
So,
So
so what with people that never like have never missed the period and it's always on time? Like, is that like really solid hormones? Or like what would you say about that? Even
yeah,
though they're
no.
not really stressed, like,
Well,
right?
Well, everyone has a different, the hormones are complicated, and so they have all sorts of different ways they can present. But like I would say in general, having a period every month is great. That's fantastic. That shows a good sign of health, right? That's a good vital sign to have. The only thing is that a lot of people get their period every month, but it's just bad, right? So it's painful, it's stressful, it's causing them major psychological issues like people with PMS or PMDD. That can cause even major like mental health problems, right? So even though they're getting their cycle every month. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're perfect. It is good that you're getting it. But then you also have, I've had clients who are like in their low 30s, haven't had a period in 3 years. And you're just like, it's like, you're like, wait, what happened? Like, and they're not menopausal. They're in what's called a stress induced menopause. So
Wow.
you hear this sometimes about like gymnasts who, they're overworking, so they're over exercising, basically, maybe not eating as much as they should. Typically, that's the recipe for losing your period. A lot of athletes, a lot of like Olympians, things like that, they lose their period because they are just putting a ton of stress on their body, and the hormones basically shut down, right? So the hormones are like, whoa, this person is in major fight or flight all the time. Like, let's say you're a famous gymnast and you're working out, 10 hours a day, right? Um, that's a stress on the body that people don't realize is like, it's as if you were under, stress and in a giant thunderstorm, like on a boat for like 10 hours a day. Like it's like it's a major stress on the body. So the body decides, okay, this is not an environment where we want to make a baby, right? Like your body's basically like this girl is in major stress mode. There's no way that we're bringing a baby into the world. So we're going to cut off the hormones and cut off the period. So, that even happens to, people I know who are just like they work out a lot and they don't eat enough. That can be another thing. Diet, like severe dieting, people with eating disorders, obviously they can lose their period too. So food is really a big deal when it comes to hormones. It can affect everything.
Mhm.
Um, you really do need that protein. You need it to make amino acids to make you feel good and then to make hormones, which are so critical, right?
Yeah.
Um, so then this whole cycle, this is where I like to say, you should start testing. Um, and like it's kind of when you start to like not feel like yourself, maybe at the late 30s, or for some people it's mid 40s, some people it's not even until late 40s, right? And I know, and Alex has like a perfect hormone, so we all are like hate you because she's like, I feel great, and it's
Oh,
like
great.
in her
Yeah.
40s. Yeah, I know. So but everybody's
Yeah.
different, every and Yeah.
Everyone is different. I've never been affected by hormones, I guess. I've never kind of had any of these things. That's why you're like, I'm not knowledgeable in this space because yet I haven't kind of been affected by it like that. And
Yeah.
I think it comes from, my mother, obviously.
Mhm.
But she would always say to me, and I told you this, she would say to me, "Oh, I hear people complaining when they have their period. They're in bed." And she's like, "What is that? We don't do that. We nothing. We just do it."
Yeah.
She was always saying she will be up like, yeah, acting like normal. And I guess that's how I've always been, but I guess I'm not affected that badly, right? So I can
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
and for some people too, it's like, there it can be an iron storage issue, right? Like they get their period and then all of a sudden they're losing all this iron in the blood and it makes you extremely fatigued and, you're literally like, "Oh my God, like I can't even get out of bed." Or you have, you always see what's like the meme where it's like the girl has her period and she has a hot pad on her belly and like, all these things, you know. I don't know. I never really did a lot of that stuff early on. I didn't start sort of having hormonal issues until my late 30s. So, but I never really had bad periods like that either, like kind of how you're describing. Not until later. But my in my case, it kind of hit me, the perimenopausal thing hit me kind of late 30s roughly. And it's interesting because my mother had some pretty severe hormonal problems. She went into menopause at 39,
Oh,
which could be considered a stress-induced menopause. It's hard to say. Usually when something like that happens that young, there are other things at play. She actually had Hashimoto's also.
mhm.
So, it's interesting. You never quite know what's causing these things. It could have been an infection that was never treated. It could have been, like mold illness, just like what you're talking about. Like it could be all these different reasons can cause these things to happen. And it isn't necessarily genetic, although that could be a player. Typically, though, you should look at the way your mother went through menopause, and that's going to be a great primer for you to know
Right.
what it might be like for you, right?
Right.
So,
But she kind of breezed through, I would say, but it was her mindset more than anything. She had such a
yeah.
strong mindset. She just had another cake and she laughed, like that was kind of the mindset how I remember her. And she was, like I said, she wasn't healthy the way she ate in the sense of her food was healthy. It was like Swedish wholesome foods, but it was all the sugar she would have, like all the time. And so I would say like that in the epigenetic space would be like, I'm not living like that at all, right?
Yeah.
So I would say I would go through it better, although I never saw her suffering at all, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, that's a typical, that's great, actually. That's the way it should be, right? Like it should be an easy process.
Yeah.
And I think, for the most part, I think the way you manage stress, and it sounds like she, just like stress was like, like it's all, brush it off the shoulder, kind of move on, right? That kind of thing. And I think, other people hold stress in, and that can cause more hormonal issues because of the way cortisol is affecting it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But
Yeah.
also I just wanted to say too about menopause. So menopause is actually you're not technically in menopause until you've gone a whole year without a period. And the average age for women to go into menopause is 51, right? So so this can happen anytime roughly in your 40s. Like 45 would be considered still young. But there's also people who are still cycling until they're 56 years old. There's like there was that one woman, right? She was 55 and had twins. Like
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Wow.
so listen, it can happen. Like you can
Right.
you can keep plugging along, right? And still get your
Oh,
period for a long period of time. But go ahead.
yeah, well, can I ask you some questions that I think is really interesting for the listeners? So,
Yeah.
first of all, when you go to your doctor, then, if your doctor will listen to you, if he won't, I mean, or don't even go to the doctor, go to Molly, okay? What tests would you be would you be testing? When would you be testing, and what would you be testing for, and what type of test is my question number one. And number two is, why would you supplement with hormones? And you hear this myth about estrogen supplementation and cancer, breast cancer, right? Can you kind of answer those
Yeah,
things?
absolutely. So typically, like for functional practitioners, we like to run either a Dutch test, which is a urine test. So it's a 4-point urine test that you take throughout the day. Now, this, if you're a cycling female, you have to take it roughly on days like 18 to 20 of your cycle, because that just shows us a particular period where we know your hormones are going to be at a specific level that where we can read them properly, right? So if you take this test willy-nilly while you're cycling, like right after your period during ovulation or whatever, it's not going to show the right results. So there is a bit of a trick to taking it, making sure you do it on the right day, which is another discussion we have to have also about tracking your cycle. So let me get into that a little bit first, because I think it's critical, because I think a lot of women are like, how do I know I'm on day 18? Like, I
Mhm.
remember when I first started seeing a functional doctor, they were like, so what's your cycle? Like, what day are you on right now? And I remember being like, I have no idea. Like, like,
Oh,
like, what are you talking about? Am I supposed to be tracking this? Like, no one ever taught me to do that. Which is wild, because I went majority of my life, I think, until maybe 30. I mean, I don't even think I was really tracking my period up into my 20s. So for me, that was a huge thing. I was like, wow, I should really be tracking my cycle. So obviously there are apps now for this. Like I use the Clue app. There's a Flow app that you can use, and you just enter when you first got your cycle, you enter the day. And a lot of people don't realize, actually, the first day of your cycle is when the blood is heavy enough to be like in the toilet bowl, as opposed to spotting, which is like if you just wipe and you see blood, that's technically spotting and means the period hasn't quite come yet. And typically when you see spotting like that those are signs of low progesterone. And that can also, when you see spotting, you also may feel more PMSy and that kind of thing. Because it's basically like, you're on a train going up a hill trying to get to the period, and you're like chugging along, and you can't quite like you can't quite get there, right?
yeah.
Um, so that's when day one has happened, right? There's blood in the bowl. You're like, okay, like day one, and then you start counting from there. So typically with my clients, I actually make them buy a calendar off of Amazon, like one of those big calendars that has a spiral bind, and I have them hang it across from their toilet. So literally, like every time you sit on the toilet in your bathroom, you're looking at this calendar, being able to be like, okay, where am I right now? Like, where am I in my cycle? So you number, once you get your period, you number the days all the way until whatever length your cycle is roughly, which is sometimes for some women 28 days, for some women 30 days. If you're in perimenopause, it's going to be shorter than that. It's generally trends shorter as you get closer and closer to menopause. So you might be 23 days, it might be 24 days, 25 days, 26 days. So that's like, so tracking is important. And I think also like listing when you're having PMS, that's good to put on there. I also, in order to get a proper read on a Dutch test, I make my clients use ovulation strips. So you can get those on Amazon, people. They're super cheap. Just look up ovulation strips, and you just pee in a cup and you dip the stick, and it tells you when you're ovulating. And then you can take the test exactly 6 days after that, because sometimes it's tricky with women. You're not quite sure when ovulation is actually happening. Sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late. It depends on all the various variables that we discussed with stress. So that Dutch is a urine test, and the great thing about the Dutch is it shows all your like metabolites, as opposed to measuring your hormones with blood or saliva. So it looks at like how cortisol is being metabolized, which is great. And then also the Dutch test will give you a little bit of insight into that question you had about cancer. So there's this 2OH pathway that's expressed on the Dutch, that if you are high in that particular zone, you have the potential to, go down the sort of like breast cancer path. Not necessarily, but it is a sign of that, a precursor to that. And it also has to do with your methylation, which is also shown on the Dutch test. And this is why a lot of people love the Dutch test, right? Because it really kind of gives you a deeper dive, rather than just looking at like, oh, what's my testosterone? What's my estrogen? What's my progesterone? It's like looking at all these metabolites and how they're working together. Um, so, and there's actually a really simple fix if you have that 2OH pathway in a higher percentage, which is like you can take a celery root extract or like a broccoli sprout extract, which which is really funny because those help turn that gene off. So
Crazy.
yeah.
Such an
So
easy little hack.
it's such an easy hack. And I think it's important for everyone to do at least one Dutch test to look at that, to look at what's happening in from that perspective. And then going forward after the Dutch, I almost feel like you don't need to do necessarily a Dutch again. You could just do blood work, and look at hormones or do saliva. The Dutch, the test, they also have like a urine and saliva. It's called the Dutch Plus test. So you can do both at the same time and get the readings there. So, the readings can be a little bit all over the place. And, depending on how, like I said, how well your cycle, or how well the month was before with in terms of how stressed you were, it can change the hormone. So I could measure you 1 month and have one picture. It's like a snapshot, right? It's like a bit of like a Polaroid camera, like these tests, right? So if I could test you 1 month and it could look one way, and then I could text you the next month, I could test you the next month and it could look a little different, right?
Okay.
So that's what's interesting about it is that your every month is different. You're always changing based on various, different variables in your environment. But it does give you at least a snapshot, right? So you're looking and you're like kind of in general being like, okay, estrogen maybe is a little low, progesterone's a little low, and then what I do is I provide natural supplements for hormone therapy. So if I see an issue and if I feel like it can't be resolved through diet or rest or exercise or stress management, then I do like to give some supplements. So like Quicksilver, which is the brand that makes Alex's supplement. They have incredible estrogen and progesterone supplementation, which is, by the way, like pretty cheap. Like we're talking like 30 something bucks with a discount on my full script. And I just want people to know that because I feel like there's this like wall that for years, and I experienced this too with doctors where they never wanted to give any hormones to me, and I was going through a cycle where I just needed them, like and the cool thing about hormone supplementation is that you could do it for 3 months and it kind of can jumpstart your system, and then you don't have to do it, you don't necessarily have to continue it. So
Uh-huh. That's very interesting.
yes. Yeah, so that's really helpful for people who are kind of suffering through it. And once you hit it, it's a bit of a like it's definitely a hit to your mental health, no doubt. Like most people, they when you start losing estrogen and progesterone on your path to menopause, like that then testosterone goes up and it can cause hair loss issues. So I have some clients with like hair loss issues, and typically that's just a hormonal imbalance. So if you want, increasing the estrogen or progesterone potentially can help with the hair loss, or finding ways to lower that testosterone naturally. You can use like green tea extract and, saw palmetto and all these other kind of things. And that actually helps with hair. So a lot of people have questions about hair and hair loss, and a lot of that is hormonal. So,
Hmm.
um, and stress related too, right? So, and that's why like a lot of people in pregnancy, like after they give birth, then all of a sudden they have this like major shedding, right? Because their hormones have completely shifted, and they're like, oh my God, what happened to my hair? Like it's shedding, but it comes back. It's just a matter of like, your body went through this kind of shocking thing, having a baby. And so it affects it.
Well,
Um,
can I just tell the listeners that we were at a friend's house? So Molly and I, we were out in Colorado a few months ago, and we were at a friend's house, and she was like, she's 51, and she was so low, she was so out of sorts, really, 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 yeah, really out of sorts, low,
mhm.
unhappy, kind of, but not for any reason, right? And Molly looked at her and she's like, uh-huh, let me just give you a little dose of what were you giving her, Molly?
Well, first I wanted, like, she was stressed out. So, so I was like, let's just do some cortisol management. So I gave her some of my rhodiola, which is just a cortisol balancing supplement. You can also find blends of that, right? So like just any way you can lower stress is going to help the hormone situation. But being 51, I mean, that's the mean age of going into menopause, right? So for most women who go into menopause, or on their path to menopause, you lose progesterone first, and then estrogen kind of flies all over the place. Like estrogen can be high 1 month, it can be super low 1 month, it can be, like all of a sudden your boobs can get huge, and you're like, what the heck happened? Like I thought I was losing estrogen, right? Like you think the path to the end isn't normally what you would think. It's not like everything just lowers slowly and then I'm all of a sudden in menopause. That's really not the case. Typically, it's a bit of a storm. It's a bit of like one day it's high, one day it's low, the next day it's this. Like, it's like it's a bit of a shit show, to be honest. And also like your periods can actually get heavier as you get closer to menopause, which is also odd because you wouldn't think that that would be the normal thing.
No.
You think it would that they would get lighter, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, so it can be a bit of a change, but like with her, I was like, yeah, she was struggling a bit with like just some like managing mental health stuff, which is, a trick for a lot of people, is to just take a little low dose of progesterone. So you can do like Biomatrix has a great supplement. It's progesterone. You can just do like 1 drop in water, and go from there. I mean, typically I recommend testing first, just to make sure that that is your issue, but progesterone's pretty safe. And the issue is sort of when people talk about potentially HRT and cancer, it's related more to estrogen. And I always just think it's funny too that people are like so against hormone replacement therapy, and they say, "Oh, it's going to cause breast cancer," and it can if you have that 2OH pathway for sure. Like then if I see a 2OH pathway in someone's test, I'm most likely not going to give them estrogen. I'm going to find other ways around that. But but the rest of your life, the doctors have no problem putting you on birth control, which is estrogen and progesterone. So
Exactly. And
yeah,
and the 2H pathway, how do you find out? Is that the Dutch test? That's the
yeah,
only way to find out.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay,
So
cool.
that's an important one to do. I recommend everybody do at least one Dutch test. And then after that, you can measure hormones pretty easily with a quick blood work that doesn't cost much money. Like the Dutch test is expensive. It's like $300. But I think it's worth it just to have that baseline to kind of see, okay, let me look at these metabolites and see what's happening. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so that's, and also like you want to turn off that gene like we talked about with like the celery extract and the broccoli sprout
Mhm.
extract. So those are critical to know, right? So if that's what's happening, you got to be careful. Um,
Well, but that woman, so the woman we're talking about, so
yeah.
Molly did this to her, and she called me 2 days later. We had left Colorado, and she said, "I'm a different person.
Yeah.
Like I'm a totally different person."
It was like
And
one drop of progesterone
yeah,
and just some cortisol,
Rhodiola.
rhodiola.
Yeah.
That was
No,
it.
no.
And she felt better. Yeah.
So I think that's really important for the listener to hear that there is help out there. Don't feel that you are, lonely in this because there are little tricks and hacks that you can actually do.
and that
And
are and that are pretty natural.
yeah,
I'm not giving like massive doses of progesterone like you would get from a doctor, right?
right.
So this is kind of the difference in what I do versus what doctors do is that they'll give you like a giant horse pill that has a ton of estrogen and progesterone like mixed together.
Right.
So you're getting this giant like dose of hormones, and that can be tricky. That can be like a difficult adjustment for the body. So what I do is I titrate small amounts of hormone. You can either do like a drop in your water, or you can do the topical from Quicksilver, which is just like 1 drop and you rub it and you just put it on your thighs, or some place where you don't want to like where you don't want other people to like touch it necessarily. But it absorbs through the skin, and goes straight to the bloodstream, and boom. And by the way, like that kind of hormone supplemental therapy, like you can feel really like significantly better in a matter of like hours. So your body is like dying for it, right? It's like where's my progesterone? I need some.
Right.
And
That's
it
so
can
great.
really, it can help. And it can like, well, the only thing is you have to be careful. The only thing to be careful about going on progesterone is it can potentially get you pregnant. So so you got to be like, it just makes you more fertile, right? So, if you're going on it when you're in your like late 40s and you don't want to get pregnant, just be careful with that. Make sure make sure you're using protection and other things,
Right.
but but that's kind of a good thing, right? Because you want your body to be more youthful, right? And to have the ability to get pregnant is a good thing. It means that your body's healthy, and that your body isn't under too much stress, and that's why progesterone is so lovely. I always call progesterone like the teddy bear hormone, because it's like, oh, it's so like cozy. It feels like you're hugging a teddy bear. Like that's the
Oh,
feeling when you're on progesterone,
I love it.
right? But yeah, any other questions about?
No, I mean, I think what you've said has covered like really a lot of things, and I think it was just very informative. All these things that you kind of taught us, the listeners, and me, because you're very knowledgeable in this space. This is, I would say, maybe your passion. This
Yeah,
exact right topic you love to speak about, right? And you're very knowledgeable in it. So I think that's great, and I think the listeners, I mean, you should hit Molly up about this and any test, because you can do little and you can do much, correct, Molly? You have different kind of levels of testing that you can do depending
yes,
on the
absolutely. And
right?
also I just wanted to mention too that like hormone replacement therapy, even like the supplemental kind, isn't usually the first thing to do. Typically there's like fixing diet, right? Fixing your stress, like working on other areas, maybe exercise is important, things like that. Like all of these things are, you got to have the foundational stuff in place, right? And the supplements, they can kind of get you out of a rut, and then when you've got the foundational stuff, kind of in a better place, then you may not need them.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of the trick, right? It's like you use these things as tools, and things like that. And I was going to talk a little bit about like other hormonal diseases that women have, because even if it's prior to menopause or perimenopause, a lot of women can suffer from PCOS, endometriosis, PMS, PMDD, like hypothyroidism can affect your hormones. All of these things are these sort of hormonal diseases, ovarian cysts, adenomyosis, like all of these are what we would call like hormonal imbalances, right? So, like for example, with PCOS, it's characterized by generally irregular periods, excess androgen levels, and it can obviously cysts on your ovaries, but it can also like symptoms can be acne, hair, like excessive hair growth, weight gain, infertility, and there's like a whole spectrum of people who have those kind of imbalances, right? I work with a number of people who are dealing with just hormone imbalances even before perimenopause, right? So there's all these things that can happen to your period, even before you hit this sort of like 35 and up, issue. And then endometriosis is another one where your tissue is actually growing into the lining of the uterus, and that can cause like severe pelvic pain. And these are the people who are having her, like you were talking about, like who basically can't get up and move during their period, like because the tissue is growing into the uterus, so it's painful when the uterus sheds its lining. And that can cause all kinds of issues. And actually it's funny, like endometriosis, they've actually connected it to SIBO, because small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, like that overgrowth, and if you have a leaky gut, like that bacteria can actually spill out of your intestines onto the uterus.
Wow.
And then it causes this weird growth of tissue that shouldn't be there. right? And there's all kinds of supplements that can help with these issues. Like, inositol is like so helpful for people with endo and adeno and PCOS. So there's lots of things that can be done with supplements, but then, just obviously, like I said, managing lifestyle too is another like kind of big one. And if you've tried all the things and you've managed all the lifestyle stuff and you're eating really well and you're doing all the stuff, that's when it's worth, taking a deeper dive, looking at hormones and looking in to see, okay, what might be off here. So that's kind of the gist of that.
Love it. I
Yeah.
think I think we've covered a lot. We're like almost an hour in, and I think people are tired of listening
Yep.
to. But no, not listening to your voice. Your voice is beautiful to listen to. Uh, I
Oh,
don't
you know what we
know.
didn't talk? Oh, the last little bit that we
Yep.
forgot to mention was just like how to eat during your period or how to eat during
Yes.
the cycle.
Yes.
I'll just quickly kind of run through that.
Yes.
So the week before your period is kind of the trickiest week where you want to be really careful with stuff. Like you want to be light exercise, because this is where your body's like literally making a new organ, right? Like it's shedding a lining in your uterus. So the week before is kind of when all the stuff is going down, and then the period is actually just when it's all coming out. So really the week before is actually kind of more of the important week, if like the period week is what we notice because it's so obvious, right? But like the week before is really when stuff is happening. So you want to be really careful with exercise, not too much exercise. You want to eat actually a little bit more carbohydrate, in order to give your body enough, kind of fuel to like do what it's doing and make, but healthy carbohydrates, right? So I'm not
Pasta,
talking,
stacks
I'm
of
not,
pasta, right?
yes, exactly.
Right.
So, that's great. So, and then just eating eat as healthier in general during that week, I think. And then, during the period week, I would just say kind of go light on you don't have to be eating too many carbs or anything like that. Kind of try to just be healthy, eat light, and you don't have to work out too much, but you should be actually the energy should start going up right like on day 4 or 5 of the period. And then after that, you're like in your happy zone, right? Where it's like the period ends, you've got a ton of energy, you feel like a goddess again. You've come out of the dark,
Right.
cloud, and you're like, whoa, I'm gonna go run. This is when you do like running and you get all your like hard cardio out and like, you kind of go crazy and stuff like that. Whereas obviously and this is like that you can do that through the rest of your follicular phase and through ovulation. And then, as that, week before the cycle comes, it in your luteal phase, that's really where you want to be the most careful with what you're eating and taking care of yourself, resting. Because a lot of people, they think, oh, I'm starting to feel a little more bloated, I should work out more, but it's actually going to be detrimental to like push yourself during that period because that's just adding more stress to the body when it's already in like a stressed state.
Mm.
So that's something to think about. I know people have whole plans though for food. Like if you look on, the Flow, website, they have like incredible, like they have whole plans for eating. It's just a little tricky to remember what to eat, and every
Yeah.
every week of your
I,
cycle is different, so it's like it's a whole thing. So anyway, yes, I've talked too much now. So but I think this was great. I think hopefully people learned a lot. We'd love if
super
you guys,
informative.
yeah, if you guys have any hormone questions. I mean, I get everything. So anyone has any questions on hormones that they want to ask, please reach out to me, and or Alex, and we can help you guys kind of sort through what could potentially be causing them. So,
Woo.
all
Love it.
right.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.